requested the 2-minute rounds, wanting to see more action.
Patrick Klepek, did you watch the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight by any chance?
Unfortunately, I was pulled in. Well, I could blame it on FOMO. I could also blame it on I had nothing else to do. My family was off doing an activity that I was not involved or invited in. And so I was sitting home on Friday night. Netflix kept putting that giant ad in front of me. And I said, sure, I'll watch this young YouTuber beat up on an old man. What if not embrace the dystopia that is now our reality, David?
Well, the whole thing definitely had a big fall of the Roman Empire feel to it, for sure.
Yeah, it did.
But
if you could watch it,
at
least let me watch the fall in 4K, David.
I'll explain what my experience was. I was watching the documentary Martha on Netflix with my wife, and then I realized that the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight was on. And so we started switching over to it, and my wife got really upset because she really liked that Martha Stewart documentary, and she didn't like this whole boxing thing. And the thing is,
tonal switch.
The thing was like what 3.5, 4 hours long because there were undercard fights as well leading up to the Jake Paul Mike Tyson thing. And so I was thinking to myself, like, I have no idea when this fight is even going to happen. And so what we did was we switched back to Martha, and then I pulled up the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight on my phone and put it there like on silent, waiting for the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight to occur. And then when it finally happened, we switched back over, and then my wife left the room. So that's how that played out. Did you experience any audio-visual issues? Because I heard a lot of subscribers did.
Yes. I'd heard people had the best luck if they I don't know how the technology stack works, but the earlier that people were watching seemed like they were having better luck, maintaining a better view of it as it went along. I jumped in during the women's fight, which is probably about 2/3 through the broadcast. And it was it would do various things. It would buffer, it would drop to a lower quality, it would outright crash. Sometimes it would jump back in, but then I'd realize I was 15 minutes behind, and then I have to scrub forward, and then it would be like, "Oh no, you want to go live? Oh, I'm not very good at that right now." Oh no, oh no, Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good.
Wow.
Was kind of the vibe I was getting from the Netflix stream, and it was getting. I dropped something off at my neighbors. That's where my family was. They're doing an activity with the kids down there. And I mentioned I'm trying to watch this. It's like, I heard there's a fight on Netflix. I was like, yeah, it's not going very well. It's like, oh, well, they don't seem to do very well with live stuff. And this is a person who is not particularly connected to Netflix technology. But I think you'll know this because when's the last time that Netflix had a spectacular fail, which I think was essentially their entryway into live streaming. This is stuck in this woman's memory because she was so excited for that. Was it Love is Blind?
It was Love is Blind. So for those who don't know, there was a Love is Blind reunion that was supposed to happen live. And a lot of people tuned in. I think literally millions of people tuned in. And then it didn't start on time. And then the clock kept ticking, and we were still in the lobby. And then basically it just didn't happen at all. And or rather I should say they did not do it live, right? They, at some point they're like, okay, well, it's not happening. We're just gonna, we're gonna upload it and you can watch it like a normal thing. Sorry about that, folks. If I recall correctly, how it went down. And that was a Love is Blind reunion. Yes, Love is Blind is very popular, but theoretically less popular than the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight worldwide. And so this is I would say the second big snafu they've had when it comes to live TV. And I think the NFL is going to be looking over the details of their contract very closely when it comes to the Christmas game that's coming this year.
It's interesting. I know you have some numbers. What are the numbers that Netflix?
Yeah, let's talk about the numbers
because I think it's important to start there and then work backwards on what this actually says about the Christmas NFL games that are supposed to air on Netflix.
According to the numbers, the streamer says 108 million people worldwide watched social media star turned boxer Jake Paul beat the 58-year-old former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson. Those figures are based on U.S. viewing tallies from analytics company TV Vision and Netflix's first-party data. The 108 million figure comes 2 days after Netflix said 60 million of its member households worldwide watched the bout, with a peak of 65 million concurrent streams. End quote. So this is from the Hollywood Reporter reading, and they came out right afterward. They said 65 million. Look how many that is, and then this number is now become 108 million. Which, by the way, I'm just going to say doesn't fully inspire confidence that they know that they have their whole system in control. You know what I mean? Like, if
they're like, you shuffle some papers and like, oh wow, the number
shit.
changed.
Oh my god! Oh shit! Like, you guys realize there's an extra 40 million people we didn't account for?
Also, what is it? What does like watch?
What does watch
mean?
mean?
Like that metric is very important. It's important if you didn't turn on Netflix while this was airing, because yes, like Netflix has real control and uses the front end of Netflix in many ways like a newspaper, like they tell you what they think is important, and that may be filtered through what they think is broadly important to the platform or what they think is important to you based on how they've analyzed your viewing habits. But they use in web publishing, we would call it the hero image. It's like the central thing that, like, when you go onto this website or boot Netflix, in this case, what is the thing that's going to capture your eye immediately? Because we know there are psychological studies that tell us we have X amount of time to capture like your interest before your eyes like dart elsewhere or go to where you actually want to go. And they had this pinned there with big bright colors, a giant live button. Like it was like a crisp, there's Christmas games on Netflix, but this was dressed up aesthetically like a Christmas present. They're like, well, I don't like boxing, but like, I'll just see what this is. And so someone clicking, I'll see what this is, and either discovering a technical mess or being like your wife and going, oh yeah, I don't want to watch boxing. I strongly suspect that Netflix is counting any of those interactions as a family or like an account hitting that. And that's just not, it's true in the truest sense that you clicked a thing, but it may not necessarily tell the whole story on engagement with the fight. But it was, this was, everyone I know in my social life was talking about this or knew about it. So I am not going to try and suggest that that number artificially is a mirage on like how this became a pop culture event. It was very much a huge event.
Right. I'm curious, like, if autoplays happened, right? Like, do the autoplays count? I don't know. But I suspect, I set my Netflix to not autoplay whenever I'm using it. So I don't know if it counts autoplays, but whatever the case, Patrick Klepek, you were saying how people have been talking about it. Let's talk about the actual fight itself. So my understanding was the undercard fights were a lot better than the actual main event.
Yes.
In that the actual main event mostly featured a young influencer beating up on a fairly old geriatric style man.
There was a there was a moment in between when my stream could actually keep up. Because I was catching up about some video games on my Steam Deck, so I was not particularly perturbed by the
second screen watching. Patrick.
Well, I was not. I was interested in the fight in so much as it being a second screen experience. Like, I'd be curious what's going on here, how this works, and I'm just sitting around playing games anyway. But anyway, so my interactions. I had a point there. I completely lost it. This boring fight. Oh, yes. During the like in between fights, they were cut over to, like different categories of people chatting about like, what are you expecting from this fight? Like, what do you think about Tyson and Paul? And they had some, I don't know the actual characters in this universe of boxing, but it was somebody who is a serious boxing commentator and analyst. And they were asked by like the way these commentators things are usually set up. Like there's two people who are actually responding to questions, and then one person is sort of a moderator. And the moderator asks, like, how does Paul stack up, in the pantheon of modern boxing athletes? And he pauses and goes, like against real boxers? And that told me everything I needed to know. Because if I have only from the furthest distance followed Paul's like rise in boxing, but it is a carefully calculated rising through the ranks built on sheer popularity and strategic fights that he is likely to win, even if you toss aside any suspicions on it being a little wrestling like, in which there are some predetermined outcomes or designs. Like, he's picking fights that he's going to win. And the one time he's fought a real boxer, he lost. So that kind of gives you a sense of, what are people watching this for? Are they watching it for the spectacle, or are they watching it because they like to watch competent athletes compete at the top of their game?
Well, as you kind of hint there, credit where credit's due, Jake Paul understands how to market an event. And in this case, the thing he was marketing is, if you tune into this event, there is a possibility you might see Jake Paul get punched in the face.
Yeah, that was amongst my my age group. That was mostly like, you know what? Maybe the old guy wins this time. Well, no, that's
not even. Yeah, winning would be awesome. That would be spectacular. I would love just seeing Jake Paul get grievously injured, but that did not occur. None of that occurred. He did Jake Paul won decisively. Mike Tyson barely got in any punches at all.
Correct.
And by the end of the 8th round, it was quite sad. It was basically like, what are we doing here? Like, everyone I know
bowed.
Who watched it,
like, Jake Paul bowed at a certain point in the middle of a round.
Everyone I know who watches this feels bad about themselves for having watched it, present company included.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, we really left ourselves asking, what are we doing here as a society? We just watched Donald Trump win the presidency. Now we watch Jake Paul beat Mike Tyson. Truly, we have become the society that we parody in our dystopian fiction. Is kind of where we've landed now.
If you want to spin it, if you want to look at a silver lining, this is something we talk about a lot on this podcast, is people really love on-demand, watch what you want, like convenience over fiction. But they do crave the monoculture. Like, they do crave a thing to get it, like, to come around as
I see. Group. So Patrick Klepek, at the end of the day, the real Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight is the friends we made along the way watching it together.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just would prefer a better thing to watch. That we can do better than this. But I think it does speak to, like, a longing for, like, something to watch communally, and like that, like, it's there, and then I can do it. And I know that when I'm on social media or I text a friend, like, you can have an expectation that most people have at least an opinion, positively or negatively, about what's going on. And I know there's been a lot of hand wringing over what this says about the 2 Christmas Day Netflix games, which is, this will be the first time they'll be hosting any NFL games, and they are, like, on Christmas Day. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Pittsburgh Steelers is one matchup. The Ravens and the Texans are another matchup. Those are both, like, when you get to that point of the NFL season, there is a chance that teams will start resting their starter players, their high-profile players, because they'll actually just be preparing for the playoffs in a couple of weeks. But the scheduling here and the extension of the NFL season a couple of years back means that these are actually likely to be very impactful games for what's called seeding, which is like where you fit into the playoff hierarchy. And all these teams are good. Like, there is not a stinker amongst them. And so those are, like, going to be highly competitive, like, really important games when they debut. If you take Netflix at their word that 60 million or even 100 million people watched boxing, I know the NFL is popular. The numbers aren't going to they'll find a way to spin them that way, but that boxing event, I think, was exponentially popular than any of those singular games will be. That's a Super Bowl sized pop culture event,
right?
That is singular in its attention. These are important games in a season that will be big, but I actually expect Netflix to broadcast them just fine.
Okay. Well, let's come back, and I'm going to play that clip that you just said in a month.
I'm going to watch them, even if they're, like, I'm a huge football person, so I'll be watching through the pixel. I'll be watching through the pixels. Regardless, I don't know if you saw it.
Let me put it this way, Patrick. I think you're probably right. It's going to be fine. I think if things go wrong, people will be less forgiving than they were for this thing. Right?
Yeah, and there's more emotionally invested in these games than there was this. Right. Like the Paul thing was more of a pop culture, like a thing to watch. But these are going to be
Football has used broadcast technology that has existed for decades,
And it works
basically
fine.
no problems. Right?
Yes.
Like, and so if they are having problems with the stream or whatever, people are going to be pissed.
Yes.
But we'll see. We'll see. You're
I don't know,
probably right.
One small thing was, I forget who it was. It might have been Antonio Brown, who is an ex-NFL wide receiver, but there was some popular athlete who had, I don't know on which service it was, probably one of the ones that is not going to kick you off for copyright, but 6 million, he was live streaming, he was at the fight, and took his phone and was, while Netflix was crapping out, was just like this is the fight took place at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, has a giant monitor in the center of the field. I went to it once ages ago. Like, you cannot fathom how big these screens are. They're like distracting from the actual athletic play happening on the field. He was just filming that and streaming it, and 6 million people were watching it.
Right.
Because it was more reliable to watch a guy at the fight filming a big screen and broadcasting it out than it was to watch it on Netflix.
Yeah. That's fascinating to hear that your neighbor and friend like still remembers the pain of the love. Because I actually do remember. I do remember this because it was an appointment. It was an appointment. Like, hey, we're all gonna get together. We're all gonna like watch this at the same time. And I guess the disappointment lingers. And so I'm gonna say that I'm gonna put this out on a limb. Okay, go on a limb with this. I don't think people made disappointment viewing in general. Like, I don't think people were like, hey, friends, let's all gather together and watch the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. I mean, maybe some of you did.
I think you're wrong, actually. I think you have different friends than I do.
Okay, yeah. All the people I know like watched it on their own and felt bad about it. That's kind of like
the people I know that got together to watch it as a group also felt bad about it. So that part is in common.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think there's going to be more appointment viewing, gathering together to watch the Christmas game day NFL.
Well, it's also Christmas. You're stuck in a room with people, and you put on sports to have something. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I'll be curious.
So yeah, I don't know, man. Like it just feels really high risk to me, but we'll see. We'll come back in a month. Netflix for NFL Christmas game day. Godspeed. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.